Today, I'm going to talk to you about the 5 biggest problems in service businesses. My name's Colette, and I ran a service business for 15 years. I ran a marine engineering company. We did welding, fabrication, pipe fitting, plumbing, mechanical work. We did heavy rigging, and we were essentially a ship repair contractor. I grew the business from 0 to 5 million in annual revenue with 50 employees. And today I have transitioned out into business consulting and brokerage. I now help service companies to value their businesses, prepare their businesses for sale, and mostly review operations to make the business more valuable when they are ready to sell. So here are the top 5 things that I experienced in my own business, and you are probably doing these things without realizing it. So we're going to go through them, and I hope this is helpful. All right. The first thing that you're doing is probably not doing properly is job costing. Okay. Job costing is really important because it's a deadly stealer of profit, and it hides itself from you, especially if you're a technical business owner. You know how to do the work, and um, you've got really good people on the team, but maybe you just rely on your bookkeeper and you get reports from them once a month or something, and then you have people in the office doing AP and AR, but maybe you don't actually sit down and do regular job costing. So here's where the money slips away from you, okay? So let's just say that you pay your technician $30 an hour. You quote a 4-hour job. In your mind, you're thinking, okay, it's $120 that's costing me in labor, right? But the real cost is actually $49.50 an hour, not 30. And here's why. You've got your $30 base salary. You've got $960 in taxes. That's 32%. You've got $450 for workers' comp. That's 15% of your hourly rate. You've got $2.40 for benefits. That's 8%. You've got $3 expense for your truck and your tools. That's 10% amortized. So for that 4-hour job, the cost is actually $198. And that gap is $78 per 4-hour job. Now, the damage of that, the big picture damage, let's say that you're doing 2,500 jobs a year, that's going to be $195,000 in phantom profit. That's why I know for me, sometimes we would be really busy and the guys would be working, all week, and we'd be closing out jobs, but the money would be tight. If you're experiencing that at any time, this is an area of your business you need to look at. This is really important, and you should be doing very detailed job costing. Your accountant can help you to work out your burden, your hourly burden per person, so that you can then have that number and you can quote accordingly. And I think you'll find then that your jobs actually become more profitable. Okay. The second reason is your dispatch process is costing you extra money. And I'll give you the example. So everybody meets at the shop at 7 a.m. You have your morning huddles. You get ready for the day. People get dispatched, and then the phone starts ringing. The coordinator or the dispatcher, in my world, we call them coordinators, but your dispatcher is shuffling people around, or there was an emergency, or somebody had to get pulled off a job to go and do something else. And this is a huge time waster. You have to think of it this way. Let's say your routes are optimized, right? And you're wanting to have techs traveling 28 to 32 miles a day. Now, maybe you're not doing it that precisely, or maybe you are, but when you start pulling people and moving them around, those technicians can actually average 45 to 50 miles per day that you weren't accounting for. So let's just say that's 18 extra miles per day per tech. Per tech. Sorry, there's a lot of data here, right? So let's say that you got 18 extra miles per tech per day. You've got 5 trucks times 18 extra miles times 250 working days. That equals 22,500 wasted miles per year. At the IRS rate of 70 cents a mile vehicle cost, that's 15,750 just in extra driving that's being wasted. Okay. But here's the real cost. Those extra miles mean you need more trucks to cover the same service area. And then each fully loaded truck costs you $18,000 to $22,000 per year to operate. So poor dispatching can, and I think I'll probably do some deeper dives on these numbers. I'll separate each of these out and maybe walk you through some detailed examples. But poor dispatching can cost you $35,000 to $40,000 per year minimum in wasted capacity. Okay, so solution's pretty simple. Territory zones with time blocked scheduling. And in my business, once we implemented that, we were able to do it a little bit differently, full disclosure, because we ended up sending our teams to travel. So when we started doing that, we had a lot of time wasting when we were just in our local geographic market. Somebody would come back to the shop because they forgot a wrench, or maybe we were waiting for a specific part to come in on an emergency job, and then the tech went to pick up the part at the vendor, and the vendor wasn't ready. The coordinator hadn't called in from the office, and the tech sat there for 2 or 3 hours, and had also driven across town. But once we actually started sending people to travel, we had a lot more control over that drive time and that travel time. But for once you implement zone-based dispatching and you put some time blocks in place, you can cut that drive time by about 35%. And that's going to increase your jobs per tech from 4.2 to 5.8 jobs per day, I worked out. So again, I'll come back to you with more detail on that in a different video. Okay, the next big problem is this one. This one I would catch pretty often. The hardest thing for me was managing it because I was not the technical person in the field running the jobs, right? I was running the operations. So I would have to be very aligned with the technical team, with the managers, and with my business partner for us to be able to manage this so that I wasn't doing it after the fact. And I also wasn't making unreasonable requirements, just to manage overtime and, getting in the way of the jobs being done. So let's go through overtime. So you're paying time and a half when you don't have to. And this is a real thing. So most businesses will let the techs hit 40 hours by Thursday. Very true. So you've got your guys working 10-hour days, right? Because you're really busy. So then by the end of the day, Thursday, everybody's done 40 hours, which means all of Friday is going to be overtime. Another thing you have to be mindful of as well, I notice this a lot, is even if we say hit overtime towards the end of the day, Friday, sometimes the guys would be slow getting started, and then we would have deadlines on jobs. So we would even have to schedule people on Saturday morning, and that would be overtime. So I think managing your jobs from the very beginning with the same sense of urgency as when the week's coming to an end and everybody's wanting to, wrap up and have the weekend off would be very beneficial. Okay, so let's go through some numbers. So like I said, most businesses let techs hit 40 hours by Thursday and then pay overtime on Friday. So here's the calculation. So we've got a 10-person field team doing 5 hours of overtime per week. So we've got 10 techs times 5 hours, times the 1.5 rate, the 1.5 rate. So that's $30 an hour equals $2,250 per week. So that's $117,000 per year in avoidable overtime. That's a ton of money. So putting them into that time and a half rate, all that's doing, especially if you do fixed price quotes, fixed firm quotes, all that's doing is eating your profit. And if you have 10 techs doing 5 hours per week at the time and a half rate, and that comes out to $117,000 per year, that is $117,000 of profit, right? That you're just scraping that out. Okay, so the key is going to be looking at the schedule structure, not just telling people to work less hours. Same work and different structure is, massive savings. That's not how this is going to be. So as I was saying before, you've just got to manage those schedules. And I definitely noticed in my own business that at the beginning of a job, a lot of time was wasted. But then, we would start to tell everybody, okay, we were looking at the time daily to see how they're doing with progress, and we'd receive progress reports. We did a lot of larger jobs, that were maybe they would have two parts to them as well. We would have the beginning where we had maybe rigged out an engine, and then we had brought the end, we had rigged out the engine, waiting for the new engine to come in. So that would be part one of the job. And then part two would be later. So we would want to make sure that in the first half of the project, if there was a 2-week lull where we were waiting for the new engine to be delivered, and then we would rig that in, we want to make sure we don't eat up all that time in the removal, and then we're tight on the install. So that's kind of how we had to manage our work. Okay. The next thing I want to go over with you is unbilled materials. And, I think we all know that this is a big one. So basically, what this means is materials are walking out the door unbilled. Okay. And how does it happen? Well, if we were doing a live stream, I think I think you guys could tell me. They grab the parts from the warehouse, they forget to log it immediately. Tech gets to the job, he installs the part, he completes the job, he forgets to add the parts to the invoice or tell the office that he's pulled it from the stock. Maybe he didn't log it on the way out. Customer gets free materials and you eat that cost. So industry data actually shows that the average materials loss rate is 5 to 8% of total materials cost. Okay, so let's do some math again. So on a $6 million a year HVAC company, for example, with 25% material costs, that's $1.5 million in materials. 6% unbilled materials equals $90,000 per year. So in my company, I know we bled about $55,000 a year this way before we figured it out. So this fix is it's pretty simple, and nothing leaves the warehouse without scanning. That's it. 4 seconds per transaction saves you $90,000. So if we start adding up these profit leaks, you can see why sometimes you're like, where's the money? So that one that's going to be the easiest fix. And most owners don't track this just because they don't realize it's happening, right? It shows up as a mysterious low margin that nobody can explain. I remember many times being like, what, where is it? So if you do this is a simple fix, and this can put back, let's see, if you're doing $6 million a year, this can put back, $90,000 in your pocket in profit. And that would be nice for the guys, right? For a Christmas bonus, the guys and the girls. So the next one I've written down for you is the customer financing gap. So according to House Call Pro's research, 67% of customers want financing options for major home service purchases. So now I was doing industrial and commercial work, but if you're watching this and you're, servicing homes, and people as opposed to businesses, this is relevant for you. They say that only about 30% of service businesses offer in-house financing or financing partnerships. And so here's the math on a typical HVAC replacement business. We've got average replacement cost $8,500, 100 replacement opportunities per year. Without financing, you close 40% of cash buyers, so you get 40 deals. With financing, you close 65%, including finance. So you close 65 deals, right, instead of 40. So that's 25 extra deals at $8,500, and that equals $212,500 in additional revenue. Not too shabby. So at industry standards of 42% gross margin on installs, that's about $89,250 in gross profit you're leaving on the table. Okay, very good. I think we're going to do some more deep dives on all of these numbers for you over the next few weeks. So companies that offer financing are typically seeing 60 to 80% higher close rates on major purchases. So that data is pretty clear, right? So these add up to your 5 cash leaks. So I'll just run you through them again, right? We've got the job costing errors. Those were 195,000 of profit that you were leaking. Dispatch inefficiencies, 40,000 there in lost money. Avoidable overtime, 117,000 in wasted money. Unbilled materials for $90,000, and no financing option if you are B2C, $89,000. So that's going to be, check this out, guys, a total annual cash bleed of $531,000. That's $500,000 of profit gone. You don't even see it. You don't even know that you have the option to have it there. So that's nearly 9% of revenue just gone. Okay. So in my own business, we had 4 of these 5 problems. Actually, we did have the financing problem initially, but we fixed that. Even in the commercial world, what we started doing was offering terms. The bigger your clients get, the longer they want their payment terms, and you're talking net 90. But what you can do is, in the commercial world, is you can do what's called factoring. So we would offer the 90-day term so that we could close. We had clients like Bombardier Transportation was one of our clients. We did work for a company called Bollinger Shipyards, which was one of the biggest, now owned by the biggest ship builder in the world. They were bought by Schwest. Irrelevant for this, sorry. But we did finance, but we had to, because we were a small business, we had to fix that gap with factoring. But certainly if you are B2C, meaning that you are serving the general public, you're doing residential, you can just give them payment terms. Just get a credit card and just run those payments for them. But do financing, because if you don't finance, like if we wouldn't have financed those bigger customers, they would never have worked with us. They were not going to pay. They weren't going to pay 50% upfront and 50% upon completion. They wanted to pay at the end of 90 days. And they wouldn't mind to give us a small amount of a deposit, but once we set them up on an account, they actually expected we could do progress billing, and that way we could finance the progress invoices. But you're going to want to figure out the financing bit, because that is definitely leaving money on the table. Okay, so what do you think? I'm going to be doing more of these types of videos to help you with your operations. And again, my name's Colette Kemp, and I ran a service business for about 15 years, believe it or not, a skilled trade, blue collar business. So if you have any questions, or if you would like more information about how you can improve your operations, you can certainly comment below. And I hope this was helpful.